Welcome to the story of how I almost died. Before we get into it, I don't want any pity for what I'm about to talk about. These are just the facts of what happened and how I felt. Yeah, I want to share my story. What happened to me, I didn't even know was a thing. And if there are any other women out there who have gone through something similar or anything like that, I want them to be able to feel heard. So everything started in October. I was actually working on a different video that I never put out where I was making a cosplay to go see the Chainsaw Man movie. Really good, highly recommend. During the making of that video, I got kind of sick and I wasn't feeling well and I just felt really tired. Just really tired and kind of moody and not myself. Typical PMS symptoms that kind of never went away. And then I had my period, but it was for 1 day. Trigger warning, this video might get kind of graphic, so if you have a weak stomach, if you don't care about women's health, you should start. Feel free to click away or stay, but just warning, this story I'm about to tell is going to get a little graphic. But anyways, so I had my period for a day, not even, and then it went away, and then it was just done. And then that weekend, I was still having PMS symptoms, even though I had bled for 1 day. So I was just F it, I have a pregnancy test. I'm just gonna take it, whatever. Peace of mind. I was listening to fantasy football advice and I took the pregnancy test and it was positive. And my first thoughts was, but I want to be skinny. And then I called a friend and I called my mom and I was talking about it and I was talking over it and I was trying to make up my mind, what am I gonna do? What decision am I gonna make? And I decided to keep it. And I felt myself just fill with so much joy. I was so happy. Man, I should have some tissues. I did not think I was gonna cry this early into the video. I was just really happy, and right there and in that moment, my whole life changed. I was gonna have a child and that was gonna be my life. And for so long, I felt so lost. And for the first time in years, I finally felt I had some kind of purpose. And I know I had just found out, but it was immediately filled with love, and to the point where I started eating differently. I was eating the same healthy foods that I normally do, or cooking the same things, but I was making my meals with so much thought and love and care. I literally was putting love into the food that I was making. And as I was eating, I felt I was fueling not just myself, but I felt I was fueling my baby. I was fueling my future child, and I was feeding them. And I've never felt so much love in my life outside of Archie and James, because they're my number one. I had no idea how my partner at the time was going to react. We actually weren't even really talking during that time. And I didn't know how he was going to react, what he was gonna think or say. And I weirdly had a Tiffany's box that had this engraved pen in it, and it was perfect size. And I put the pregnancy test in the Tiffany's box, and I had no idea how he was gonna take it. And I sat there and I was I have something to give you. And he was weird, he was what, just say it, just spit it out. And I was okay. And I gave him the Tiffany's box, and he opened it, and he was just jaw drop, shaking and just smiling. And he was he was so happy. And he's is this real? And I was yes, it's real, it's real. And he's are we keeping it? And I was yes, of course. And for that first week, it was just shared love and bliss and just So we made our first doctor's appointment, decided we weren't really gonna tell anybody until like, you know, first heartbeat and things like that. So we just saw like a regular doctor, and I didn't realize that she couldn't do an ultrasound there. She's like, how do you feel, blah, blah, blah. And I told her that I had actually had a little bit of bleeding. I had that first day of bleeding, and then the day that I took the test, I had just some like slight bleeding then too. She was like, some bleeding is normal, like spotting is normal, you're fine. So I went to work that night and I just started cramping, and I had more blood that night. That was Thursday, and I hadn't had blood since Sunday, and it just felt weird. Like something felt weird, and I was like in pain, cramping, but it wasn't bad. It just felt like a light period. Once I got home that night, it was like midnight, and I called the advice nurse for Kaiser, and he was like, you need to go to the hospital right now. I was like, but I feel fine, I can walk, I can stand. He was like, no, you need to go to the hospital right this second. I stayed in the hospital until 5:30 in the morning. I got all sorts of tests, blood tests, stomach ultrasound, and then transvaginal ultrasound, which really sucks, but it's where they stick the ultrasound thing up inside of you. They didn't see anything in my uterus. They were like, it could be too early to tell, but there is a small mass. It's like something cyst. I forget what it's called, but they're like, it could be a cyst, but there is like a mass in your right ovary fallopian tube that we're not sure about. It could be an ectopic pregnancy. An ectopic pregnancy is when the fetus is when the embryo implants itself inside the fallopian tube instead of the uterus. The uterus is designed to grow a baby. Your fallopian tube is not designed to move. It's just like a tunnel, like a straight passageway from the ovary to the uterus. But they couldn't fully 100% confirm that it was an ectopic pregnancy. They weren't sure about it. They said you can wait and see, or you need to decide how to get rid of it. And for ectopic pregnancies, you have 3 options really. The first one is to get a methotrexate shot. What methotrexate is, it's the same drug that they use in chemotherapy, where it attacks and dissolves rapidly developing cells like cancer or a baby. Or you can do what's called a laparoscopy, where they go through your belly button and remove your fallopian tube. Now, for those who don't know, you only get 2, and it could lessen your chances of having a child in the future. It's still possible, but... Or option 3, which doctors do not recommend, is you just kind of wait and see what happens. And it either takes care of itself on its own, which is very rare, or the pregnancy continues to grow inside your fallopian tube until the tube can't take it anymore. The tube bursts, and you can internally bleed to death. Here's the thing. I really wanted this baby. I loved my baby, even though it didn't even exist yet, and it had only been a week. I was so in love with it. And because I'm not regular or anything like that, I decided to wait. And so what I had to do is every 48 hours, I had to get blood tests to make sure that my hormone levels, my pregnancy hormone levels, were jumping 100% every 48 hours. That would mean it was a viable pregnancy. If it doesn't jump 100% every 48 hours, then it's likely an ectopic. After the first 48 hours, I got my blood check, jumped 100%, thought I was in the clear. Was so happy. Was so relieved. Went back another 48 hours. It had only jumped 73%. The doctor's office called and told me that night immediately to go back to the hospital. And I was telling myself every reason about why it wasn't perfect looking and how this could still be a viable pregnancy. I went back to the hospital to get another transvaginal ultrasound. Yay. She was taking forever, and she kept taking snapshots, and they're legally not allowed to tell you anything that's going on. She was talking to me, and I could just tell that she hadn't found anything in my uterus. And then she was like, hold on, I need a second opinion. Calls in the other ultrasound tech. She goes, do you see what I see? Right there on the right side. And the other ultrasound tech goes, yeah, I see it. And I just knew. I just started sobbing. I knew immediately, because the whole time they were looking at the right side, the right ovary, the right tube, and I knew that if there was nothing inside of my uterus, but something was continuing to grow on the right side, that it was an ectopic pregnancy. From there, I just started uncontrollably sobbing. The ultrasound tech ended up walking me unconventionally to the hospital lobby, where I waited for a room, and even though the lobby was pretty full, I just howled. I just sat there and howled and sobbed and cried. Somebody else waiting for a room like handed me a tissue box, and I just couldn't keep it together. I went to see a regular OBGYN. I finally got like the official 100% diagnosis, and she told me immediately to go to the hospital. And I had the choice between doing the methotrexate or the laparoscopy. But because I could not afford to miss work for the next 2 to 3 weeks, I ended up choosing to do the methotrexate. The thing about the methotrexate shot is it takes several weeks to officially work. You are still at risk of your fallopian tube rupturing. I had to lie low. I was on bed rest the first week. I am day 6 post methotrexate. I have to go and do blood work tomorrow to make sure that my levels have dropped from my blood work that I did on Monday. I am still having a lot of like pain and discomfort, but nothing excruciating on my right side. It's just really uncomfortable. I feel it in my whole body from like my shoulder down to my hip because I'm like walking funny. I just spent all morning on the Reddit Ectopic support group reading just like other women's stories. A lot of them have to get the surgery. I'm scared that if I get the surgery, I have no one to like help me and help with my dog. It's just like, it's so much and it's so scary. Like every time I sneeze, I'm like, oh my God, am I gonna rupture? Yeah. Here's James. James is keeping me company. Hi, James. I could not lift heavy, I couldn't exercise, I couldn't drink, I couldn't, do the things that got me pregnant in the first place. After the first week of the methotrexate shot, my levels were not dropping as much as the doctor had hoped, so I had to go back and get a second methotrexate shot. Finally, I was just starting to feel a little bit more like myself. The only symptom I was really still experiencing was just severe hormonal grief, like just so much grief over the loss, and everything made me cry, and I felt like everyone around me was pregnant or having babies or things like that. It's day 11 past my second methotrexate dose. It's week 3 after knowing about that topic. But I'm so sad today. And I just feel tired and sad. I can't even take care of my dog today. And I feel so alone. This is the worst experience that's ever happened to me. And I'm trying to stay positive, but today I'm just too tired and sad. I don't know. I just had to share. My heart hurts. And then December 4th happened. I woke up around 6 a.m. and I started feeling some pelvic cramping, and it was starting to increase, and it had been enough weeks post my first methotrexate shot that I was like, this can't be happening. There's no way I'm having an ectopic rupture right now. And there was a big part of me that just wanted it to be gas. I tried to go to the bathroom, and as I was sitting there, the pain just kept increasing more and more, and I just started just dripping with sweat, and I felt so hot. the room just felt so hot. Like I almost wanted to just rip my skin off. That's how hot I felt. I think this is a rupture. And I got up, and as I was like crawling back into the bed, felt myself starting to black out. And then I laid down and I laid there with James. I didn't even know where my phone was. James is my cat. But I was just looking at him and I didn't know what to do. And so I did the only thing that a girl does know how to do when she's in trouble is I called my mom, and my mom was like, you need to call an ambulance. You need to call 911. And all I could think about was the ambulance bill and how I just have no money. Let me call around and see if I can get a ride first. Called my boyfriend, who didn't answer. It was early. Called my neighbor, who also didn't answer. It was early. And then I ended up calling my boyfriend's mom, and she told me, she's like, don't worry, I'll be right there. I'm 20 minutes away. Like, I'll be straight there. And I was like, okay, I'll see you soon. Hung up. Called my mom back to let her know, like, hey, someone's coming. And then she asked me, can you stand up and like walk downstairs? And it was at that moment that I like realized, no, I can't walk. I can't stand up. I don't even think I can turn over in bed. And I didn't think I was gonna make it. So I ended up calling 911, basically explained, but I was like, I think I'm rupturing. I need to go to the hospital right now. They were like, okay, just make sure that your door is unlocked. And my door is on the first floor of my apartment, and my bed is on the second story stairs. I don't know how I got down from the top of the stairs to the bottom, but I do know that my slippers were abandoned on the third step. It was literally by the grace of God that I got down those stairs. But once I got down, I unlocked the front door and I just sat next to the front door waiting for the paramedics. They came pretty quickly. They dragged me to the wall. They tried to give me an IV. I was just in so much pain and like moaning and groaning like the whole time. And then the guy was like really nervous to put in the IV and he couldn't do it. And so I was just like, I just refused his IV because he was struggling so much. I just felt like kind of scared by it. They strapped me to like one of those flat stretchers and they lifted me up and they carried out my apartment and they carried me down my stairs, and I swear the whole time I felt like they were gonna drop me, and I kept yelling at them like, please don't drop me. And he's like, I won't. And I was like, I don't know, I don't trust you. You don't seem pretty steady back there. The whole time in the ambulance ride, they kept like saying on like their radio, 35 female, extremely pale. And I don't know what it was, but just like them shouting 35 female, extremely pale just made me feel really old and like really embarrassed about being extremely pale. So then the paramedics took me to the intake room where they just immediately started undressing me, like my full-on boobie was out in front of the paramedics. But they immediately started undressing me and putting me in a hospital gown, hooking me up to IVs, things like that. Everyone kept calling me pale. They did just like a quick stomach ultrasound and confirmed was a rupture, and I was internally bleeding to death. Then the doctor came in and he was like, do you know what's going on? And I was like, yes, I had an ectopic rupture. And he was like, do you know what we're gonna do? And I was like, yes, I'm gonna get a laparoscopy. And then he was like, no, we are going to perform a laparotomy. So the laparoscopy is like the cute surgery where they go through your belly button. The laparotomy is where they just full on slice open your stomach to remove my fallopian tube. I had to like sign all these paperwork. I couldn't even see to like sign the paperwork or lift my body up. I was just moaning and crying in pain the whole time that the nurse had to hold my hand with the pen up to the paperwork to sign it. They immediately rushed me into the operating room lobby, and I heard the nurses talking. They're like, what's taking so long? What are we waiting for? They're like, we're waiting on bags of blood in case there needs to be a blood transfusion. It will be about an hour. The nurse came up and she's trying to take blood from me, but there's like nowhere to take blood from. I was like so poked up with needles and stuff. And so she starts trying to take blood from my wrists and my hands. And as she's trying to draw blood, nothing is coming out. She just keeps saying like, oh, I can't get any blood out. I can't get any blood out. And she keeps trying like new spots on my wrists and my hands. And then the nausea was so bad that I started vomiting and no blood is coming out. And then all of a sudden, everything starts to go black and I feel everything fading. I knew that I was dying, and I felt myself going, and I felt myself losing consciousness, and I just started screaming, help, help, help me, help me. And I was already surrounded by nurses, and they just said like, screw the blood bank, and they rushed me into the emergency OR. They like lift you up by like your blankets to throw you onto the operating table. They put the oxygen mask over, and they are like, you know, like I don't know if they told me to count back or whatnot, but they just told me to breathe. And next thing I knew, I woke up, I was post-op, and I was all alone, and I was in so much pain. They took me to a room and they gave me like a little button that administers pain meds to you every 10 minutes, but I still had severe nausea and vomiting was just like really painful. So I tried not to administer the pain meds unless I absolutely had to. My mom, who it took her about 5 hours to drive down, finally showed up that night. She helped take care of my pets and stuff and sat with me a little bit in the hospital. And then after she left, I just spent the night alone in the hospital, and I just felt so like different and weird, and I don't know how to describe it, but I felt like empty. I spent the next 3 days there. They had removed my tube and sucked out over 1 liter of blood from my stomach. On the 3rd day, they came in to tell me that my hemoglobin level, so my blood level, had dropped to 6.3, where the average woman's hemoglobin level is 12 to 15.5. So I lost almost half the blood in my body. I had to get 2 blood transfusions, which is super weird. Watching someone else's blood go through the little tube and into your veins. I kept telling them that I wanted either Lakers blood or Dodgers blood, because like they have to donate, right? And I told them, I was like, I want to come out of here an athlete. So give me like athlete's blood. Like whoever my donor is, make sure that they're either a Laker or a Dodger or both. When I woke up the second morning in the hospital, they told me that they're gonna have me try to start walking and going to the bathroom on my own, which was terrifying because I was in so much pain. I was like, there's no way I could walk. But they ended up giving me a little walker. I would try and do laps in just the hallway. It took me over 30 minutes just to do 1 lap in the hallway. I was so winded. I almost passed out and didn't make it back to my room. They kept calling me pale. All I wanted was to just feel normal the whole time. Finally, on the 4th day, they let me go home. I couldn't do anything. I could barely walk. I could barely move. I couldn't sit up in bed. I couldn't like go from like laying down to sitting up at all. Rolling out of bed in the morning was incredibly difficult, and I had to sleep in like this giant pregnancy pillow. I have an incision like the top of like my pelvic area. It's like this long. It's hideous. I hate it. I couldn't go back to work, so I had no income. It's been 4.5 weeks since my surgery. My life just does not feel the same. I still can't like walk normally. I can't run. I'm finally able to walk my dog. I now have anemia from the severe blood loss, so extra exhausted all the time. The day just takes me out, you know? I don't feel like myself. I hate how my body looks in the mirror after the surgery and the inflammation in my stomach. I just feel incredibly disconnected from my body and my sexuality and like who I feel as a person. Although I almost died and I had this like really horrible surgery and this like life-altering event, I do feel really positive. I feel like God, my higher power, universe, Mother Earth, whoever has given me a second chance at life. I had been floating and lost for so long that I don't want to waste that second chance. I ended up ending my 3.5-year relationship and cutting that person out of my life, which I miss him so much, and I'm dealing through so much heartbreak on top of the loss and grief of losing my future child and losing my tube and losing my job and going through surgery. I'm now like losing the person who I thought was my partner, who I loved so much. But for the first time in my life, I'm choosing me. I'm choosing loving me. I want to be softer and kinder and easier on myself. I want to choose being authentic over being perfect. I'm just gonna keep choosing myself and choosing to love life and do things a little bit differently. And I don't know what's in store for me next or anything like that. I do know I want to continue to make videos, whether or not anyone wants to watch them. If you stayed and listened to the whole thing, thank you so much. If you were somebody who donated to my GoFundMe because I didn't have income for a month, like, thank you for the help. You really helped save my life post-op. just thank you to everyone who's listened to me and been there, and Happy New Year.